All right, so today we're going to talk about what they call step one, really of healing. Step one of healing from anything. This comes from Alcoholics Anonymous, but it's good for healing anything. And this is step one is where people fall. Step one is where people fail. If you don't get step one, doesn't matter how much you pray, doesn't matter how much you do of anything. The efficacy of what it is will go down. So it's very important. Step one. And step one is we admitted that we are powerless. And life has become unmanageable. So, step one is very, very important. No one really likes step one. Only desperate people do step one. Or very wise people do step one. Because, now I'm going to add the nom flavor to this. So, who wants to be powerless, right? Traumatized people get powerless. That word rings people the wrong way. What do you mean I don't have power? And it turns into this thing. And whether they say it or whether they feel it, this is oftentimes synonymous with weakness. You're telling me I'm weak? You're telling me I'm bad? You know, if you've been told a certain thing about how to be in life for all of life, you're telling me that I'm not good enough? That there's a lot of things. When you're powerless, powerlessness is out of where perpetration comes. It's when we feel, when you get victimized to the point of, you're done with it, then you perpetrate. That's just how it goes. So you attack. Maybe you attack someone else. Maybe you attack the person doing it. Maybe you attack yourself. But the attack comes from the powerlessness. So it's for a very good reason why this is triggering and why nobody wants to admit that, really, in a deep way. People invade countries over this. It's a deep thing. And life is unmanageable. That's like saying I'm not successful. That's like saying I spent all this time and I have nothing to show for it. Right? Most people come to know him after having lived a couple of decades. And who wants to have put in a bunch of time and energy in something and not have anything to show for it? But I'm just being very honest about why this is a struggle for people. And it should be a struggle for people. If you've worked hard, you've raised a family, you've done all these things, you've worked 2 jobs, you've done this and that, who wants to come and say that my life is unmanageable? It's still true, but nobody wants to say it or feel it because it just has another connotation of weakness, right? It's a negative quality. It's not seen as the strength that it actually is. I'll be honest, I'm constantly, people ask, Dr. Gill, how do you do what you do, listening to all this crazy stuff and this and that? It's because I'm I'm always doing step one in my mind. It's a core part of how I start any prayer. And I'll tell you why. Because when you give up control, this really has to do everything with control. This is like an anti-control statement. It's the opposite of control. When you give up the control, you become free. Free of burden. Nothing depends on you anymore. You know, what's kind of crazy is actually that people think anything other than this. You're on a rock. Someone said this to me. You're on a rock, hurtling through space at like hundreds of kilometers a second, orbiting around another big hot rock, which is orbiting around another big, probably black hole, which is orbiting around another big black hole, and we're just like speeding through. All 8 billion of us on this earth, and and if any of us is just a tiny fraction of a second where you shouldn't be, it's complete annihilation. Now think about it. Like, think about, you're driving your car, you're 100 kilometers an hour, right? Are you that far from death? Driving a car, 100 kilometers, are you really that far from death? No. It's just like, oh, when you cough, right? Oh, done. Another one bites the dust, you know? Like that's from my rapping days, I used to be into that. And so the illusion of control is that I'm driving 100 kilometers an hour and I'm fine. The mistake doesn't even have to be yours. It could be that person next to you who's on their smartphone. You have control over that? You don't. But does that stop you from peacefully driving and just kind of... Because if you want to be a skilled driver and you want to enjoy your time on the road, you have to learn to just like, just like pray that's going to be okay. I'm going to get in my car, I'm going to go on that road, and I'm going to somehow do it, and something's going to take care of me. Because if you're on highway, on the highway 1, someone might be drunk, intoxicated. We need to stop and think how lucky we are to actually be here in existence. A lot of things have to go right. You think you're doing that? You think you're on a bus? You think you're in control? I hope that bus driver had a good night's sleep. Hope he's not drunk. I hope some random passenger doesn't punch him in the face or her in the face. Like, you just stop and think about how little you have control over, and yet you're still here. You're still alive, you're breathing. I'm a biochemistry background, right? There's like proteins that are walking along cell membranes to like do replication. You just think about the vastness of how much goes right to allow you to be here. And when you start thinking about that, you start to tune into the calmness. Because something has your back. It has to, otherwise you wouldn't be here. This is a very logical thing. trying to control, in AA, they learn the wisdom of, they know that addiction is a stress-induced, defect of the mind. So meaning the defects are there for whatever reason, trauma, generational stuff, I don't know, some design problem, right? But then stress-induced defect of the mind. So what they realized was control gives you stress. So when you try to control things, especially things that cannot be controlled, you get stressed out. And when you have an addiction, you're going to drink when you're stressed out. Or you're going to binge on food, or you're going to do other things. So what they learned was, before you do any kind of healing, you really have to go through how out of control you really are. That has to be crystal clear. Forget the solution, forget any of that. You have to examine your life little bit by little bit and do an inventory. It's a great activity. Take one 24-hour period, write it out, hour by hour. What were you in control of? What are you not in control of? Become aware. We're scientific, experimental people. Faith is built on experimental evidence. That's the reality of faith. Is we try a little, we kind of figure out, yeah, that helped. And we do a little more of that. Yeah, it helped. And we do a little bit more. Right? Blind faith gets you to the start, but then over time it gets solidified if you are authentic about it. And we broaden our trust. That if we're powerless, it's not weakness, it's just the truth. Someone else told you it's weakness, but that's not true. It's just the truth. Before you can allow something to come into you to help you, you think about people in your life, right? Everyone has friends, right? You guys have friends? You have friends in problems? Yeah, you have some friends who are like, they're not well? No? You don't have any friends that are having a struggle right now?
Most.
Everyone does, right? Everyone has friends that are struggling. Now, in those friends, do you have someone who you've tried to help, but they don't really want help? They think they got it. But every time you say, hey, maybe you should try doing this, and they say, no, and they like bite your head off. You have people like that? And what do you do when you have someone like that in your life?
Over time, hopefully walk away.
You nag them?
A lot of times you nag them, right? Is that healthy?
No.
Because failed rescuing creates powerlessness, which creates the desire for perpetration. So there's two ways to powerlessness. One is trying to, one is victimizing somebody, and the other is trying to rescue somebody and failing every time. Both create the same vacuum of powerlessness that triggers perpetration activity. So that's why you don't want to do those things. They perpetuate the drama web. You construct more and more intricate webs of drama. That's why it's good to avoid it. Most of the time, if you have a friend like that, And if you have some wisdom, a lot of people in recovery have a lot of wisdom, you know, you say, just leave them, check in once in a while. But let's say 10 years later that friend comes to you and says, I'm ready for help now. Can you help me? What would you say to them?
Depends on the situation of the person, what they did.
But generally, assuming like status quo, you haven't seen them in 10 years, but all of a sudden they're ready.
I think most people would like to help them.
You'd be overjoyed, wouldn't you? You'd be happy to help them. Because they've said the magic word. They said, I can't do it on my own. My way wasn't working. They're open to your way now. And your ideas. And so, that's not just true of your friend. And I'm not talking about friends in the midst of your drama web. I'm talking about a more neutral, kind of distant friend. This is a pretty universal law when it comes to helping people. That's another secret of how I can do this work. All the time. Doctors ask me, how do you stay in that all the time? Because I don't rescue. I can't. If people aren't ready for what I have, I give them space and time. They know where I am when they're ready to ask. And then when they ask, I'm so happy. And every day I have someone new asking. So I'm a happy guy. This is the same principle that governs the connection and deriving strength from sources of power. If that source of power feels like you think you got it, it does the same thing. It withdraws. So this is where a lot of religious people come short. They're holding on to things. They're trying to control this. They feel shame. Oh, I can't ask God about this. That's too shameful. I shouldn't feel this way. Control. And control comes and it makes it so that nothing new can go in. The control, the arrogance to think that you are anything other than what you are, which is flawed. We are all flawed. We all have flaws. To be human is to have flaws. In this earth, we all have things. Nothing's perfect in our lives. We make mistakes, so we beg for forgiveness. If we're wise, let's not have illusions. You don't need to have a diagnosable mental illness. This is where healthcare providers go really short. They pretend to be perfect. Look at me. Nothing wrong with me. You're the problem. You're the problem. Learn from me. Foolishness. It's not real, because every human has problems. Every family has drama. There's no shame in that. I'm no exception. I've admitted that I'm powerless in many of those things. It's a process, still working on it. And the more I work on, this is why step one, because it's the foundation. If you want to access something, it behaves like that same friend. The same principle applies. So the more you spend time on this, and if you don't get it, then it's a good thing to add to your prayers. How do you get something that you don't get? You add it to your prayer. You know, if you believe in something, God, please help me understand step one in the deepest, in a deeper way, how it applies to me. And add the Nam thing. May whatever that prevents this also be gently healed in a safe and gentle way, even if that means outside of my awareness. You can write that down. You keep saying something like that, you're going to start to develop more insight, and the layers of step one will become more apparent to you. I put this in my prayers every day. Some other way of wording it, but I'm constantly dwelling on deepening my understanding of where I really fit in this. Because you're important. I said the other day, I think I tweaked someone the wrong way. Perhaps you're not important. Actually, I didn't. What I said on the after that is that you are important, but just not how you think you are. You are extremely relevant. Imagine this. This is also written. The universe cannot do without you. As much as you need the universe to kind of help you and stuff, the universe needs you too. And if you get blotted out of existence, everything gets lost. That's the relationship of vastness. Infinite on the outside and infinitesimally small. In quantum mechanics, they're linking these things. Infinitely big and infinitely small. And so, what do you do when you're in relationship to something that's that vast and incomprehensible? You adopt the position of a leaf in the wind. There's two kinds of leaves in the wind. You can be like a nice graceful leaf in the wind, right? Sailing. That's kind of nice, right? Or you can be the crumpled up, fighting leaf in the wind that fights the wind and ultimately gets to the same direction because the universe needs you to procreate, to do whatever it is that you're needed in this earth to do. There's something you have to do in this earth. There's something you have to be a part of before you leave. Which one would you rather be?
Smooth sailing.
Yeah, people want this. You guys swim? You guys know swimming? They talk about have you ever, what do they tell you if you want to float? Who stays afloat in the water? Is it someone who's like thrashing around, or is it someone who just like sits there and breathes? Which one? Which one goes?
The person just float, sitting there.
It's kind of funny, but it's true. You should try it. Just like lie in the water, breathe normally, and you don't float, you just float. But as soon as you start doing this, you disturb the water tension. And you sink. I'm just here to tell you that the same principle applies in the sea of life. And the number one principle to just float in the water is trust that you're going to float. Let go of the control of you got to do something. You just got to lie there. And if you do that, then you get the support of the water. So in the field of life, you just want to learn to lie there, but the only way you can do it is admitting what's true. We admitted that we were powerless over our circumstances, over our issues, over our tendencies, because they're created by things much bigger than we are. Multi-generational trauma, right? Exoduses of countries and layers, colonialism, and all of these things, right? These issues are big. They're not small. And you're wrapped up in something like that. So of course you can't stop taking a drink. There's a lot of momentum behind that desire. But when you adopt a position of relaxing, the water will hold you up. And so that is something that you can achieve by engaging with people who are like that, more like that. It's a process. Maybe the greats were fully surrendered. Most of us are working on it. Find someone who's more surrendered than you and ask them how they did it. rather than arrogantly looking at them and thinking that you're somehow different. Or somehow the same rules don't apply to you because you're this religion or you're this type of person or, this or that. Everyone's human, the same rules apply. Gravity is the same, this is the same. And so your relationship with your life is the same. It has to be the same. Consistency, otherwise the universe would be chaos. It's not chaos. It's very, very organized. Any comments or questions? So this is step one. Step one. We admitted we were powerless and life had become unmanageable. Powerless over whatever our issue is. But I like to just say generally. It's good. And when we adopt that position, our longtime friends in our system, whatever those friends are, inside or outside of us, all of a sudden feel like their message is going to be heard and they rush to come and help. Most people, when they do step one and they actually do it, relief, and the cravings go down a bunch. Life gets a little easier, but you got to do one and then the other happens. It's not like the other happens and then you do the one. You got to do it, and doing it is a matter of repetition. Say it if you don't believe any of this, just, if you're like not religious, okay, I want to believe that I am powerless and the life has become unmanageable. I don't know about that thing that Dr. Gill's talking about, but I'd sure like to believe that something like that could happen. Make it easier. Make it honest. That'll work. Because the nature of the infinite is that it works on small and big alike. It's the same to large energy. So then, 10 is the same as a trillion. So maybe some other person has beautiful concept of it, and maybe you have some warped concept, but it's the same. In fact, if you're real about this and that person's fake about this, you're better off. So, but you have to surrender, and then the vacuum of a surrender pulls in. You know that? Vacuums pull in, right? The vacuum, emptiness, pulls in something to help. That's another principle. I'm very much into physics because it is just pure physics. And in my world, right, I've stopped being amazed by the miracles. I've learned to depend on them. That's what the yogi said. I don't believe in miracles, I just depend on them. Miracles turn into just facts of existence. The number of times someone surrendered to, I can't find a job. Jobs they're not for me. Okay, I surrender to that. I'm powerless over that. And then the next day a job comes. A good one. Dr. Gill. I'm like, yeah, it's the science. Recovery is a science. It is reproducible. That's why millions of people in AA are sober. They have steps. You follow the steps, it creates an effect. Predictably. If you put in the work and take it seriously. You have to put in the work and you have to take it seriously, but it does result in a predictable effect. So too it is with this. So I've spoken about several different analogies to hammer this point home, and this is universal, not just for addicts, people with mental illness, people with just stress. Yeah, people are, I'm not mentally ill. Are you in stress? Yeah, I'm in stress. Okay, good, go with that. That's how we have to communicate with a lot of parents and people with rigid sort of ideas of wellness. And so, whatever floats your boat, but so that's step one. It is the foundation. If step one is crumbly, and you build, and it's like kind of crumbly, and you build a nice big tower of sobriety on it, it's only a matter of time before because life is earthquakes, right? Life is always earthquakes. So whenever someone relapses, it's usually this is the problem. Their building was built on, it might be a nice building, 20-year sober building, but it was built on a foundation that was shaky. That's almost always what comes up in the end. And then it couldn't withstand the earthquake of time. So that is what I will say on step one. So take your time, make it good. People are in a rush to work the steps. I just want to get better, better, better. Take your time with this one. Step 1, 2, and 3, you want to take your time. And then the rest becomes very easy. Easier than the alternative, which is continuing to live in kind of a mess. All right, comments, questions? We're at 30 minutes. Didn't quite get to 15. That's okay. Good. Thank you. Stop there.